What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. It is Tuesday evening, February 4th. We're going to be continuing our 8-part series, just reviewing each team's or each division last year in 2024. We already have the AFC South video done. I'll probably maybe make a playlist or something and put that in the comments for you guys if you want to check that out. But today's video is all about the NFC South. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my document here. I have a huge database that I use, and basically I use this for all my projections going forward, and we'll just take a look at it here and go through team by team. And the way that I do this, and I've been doing projections since 2017. Let me just widen that up a little bit for us. All right, so at the top of the column, green was 2024, and I like to look at the previous years, especially when there's been coaching consistency. With Atlanta, we haven't had that, but it's nice to kind of compare what they just did to maybe a year or two before and see what's clicking, see what's going up or down. But we're going to get into the Atlanta Falcons here. We got Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson calling the plays. Overall, it was a decent offensive output despite Kirk Cousins' struggles. He had a ton of interceptions, but he was throwing enough touchdowns, to be decent and keep the offense afloat. But overall, 65% completion percentage on the year, 4,300 yards roughly, a solid yards per attempt, 7.66. Touchdowns, low for passing, 21. I'd like to see those up next year. Hopefully we can see Michael Penix grow. And then 19 interceptions, most of those, again, coming from Kirk Cousins. That's a number that needs to get down into the low teens. And then the rushing game is what is fantastic here. Arthur Smith ran the ball a ton the last 2 years. So the rushing attempts come down to 495. You've got, they're in the 500s the last 2 years with Arthur Smith. And then a really solid, 4.48 yards per carry, the most touchdowns on an Atlanta offense, rushing touchdowns in the last few years. So huge rushing upside and efficiency with this team. And then again, we mentioned the passing numbers were solid. It was their best passing output since the Matt Ryan years. All three of Arthur Smith's seasons just didn't have the juice throwing the ball. So I don't really know how much to take away from 2024 here. I guess we'll get into it a little bit here. The positives here is you have Bijan Robinson, you have Drake London. I thought Darnell Mooney played well at times here. And then Kyle Pitts, man, he still makes splash plays every now and then, but there's just zero consistency. And I think we might be done drafting Kyle Pitts as our tight end one because he's just not a guy we can trust in our lineups every week. But let's talk about these quarterbacks here. We got Kirk Cousins, and I'm going to pull up the fantasy points per game here. Let's see. Because I just got done. Oh, yeah. Before we get any further, if you guys are members or want to check out the fantasyfellowship.com and become a member, I just dropped my 2024 advanced data study today. I'm so glad to have this up and for you guys available here. Basically, I'm just looking at all the advanced stats, for the quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end position. And we're just looking at certain metrics. And then I kind of have like maybe 10 metrics per position. And then I come up with like a grade at the final spot here. But there's a lot. It's 49 pages, a ton of information. That's kind of what it looks like. We're just showing tables and data. But everything that you want in there is there. And Michael Penix Jr. actually kind of popped in a few things. So that's what made me think of that. But anyways, if I'm just going to look at fantasy points per game here, let's see where Kirk Cousins was rolling in. And obviously he offers no rushing upside. He's all the way. Where is Mr. Cousins? Down here at 12.6 points per game. Penix Jr. didn't really have that much more success. I think it's because like the way this is calculated is, there's 2 games here that Penix didn't play in, but 6.4, 11, and 25 in his games. If we just look at Kirk Cousins' real quick, and there might have been a game or two where Kirk got pulled. He was at about 12.6. Let's see what he did here. So it was really bad at the end, 4, 2, 9, 6. He had some bright spots here. He had that 500-yard game, 4 touchdowns, but just couldn't stop throwing interceptions. And got to the point here where he doesn't throw a touchdown for 4 straight weeks. He's throwing the ball a lot, not very efficient, and it was just time to see what Penix could do, and I totally understand. Not too much to take away from the quarterback position here. Penix Solid yards per attempt here, a little bit low on completion percentage, but that should be expected from roughly 3 games starting from a young quarterback here, especially a rookie. But a lot to grow on. He still doesn't run the ball enough. He did get a rushing touchdown, but he's not going to scramble much and kind of create yard points with his legs. But I think for now, he's going to be a guy that probably profiles as a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues in 2025. Let's talk about the running backs, because we got Bijan Robinson here rushing 304 carries. He had 214 as a sophomore or as a rookie, and Algier had 186. And now Algier still getting a lot of carries, 137, but finally Bijan gets a full bell cow workload. Fantastic season in 2024. I think he was like RB2 or 3 or something like that. And then very productive as a receiver, not as productive as he was the year before. I mean, he caught 8.4 yards per carry, 4 receiving touchdowns, but he caught more passes with less targets, which was nice. So he remains a really good receiving outlet. I think you can make the argument that he should be, the first or second running back off the board, depending on who you like there. Saquon Barkley, we'll see. But I firmly believe that Bijan probably worth a top 5 fantasy pick in 2024. But don't sleep on Tyler Algier. I just want to mention real quick. Let me go. Since you guys are here and I like you guys, I'm just going to show you guys a sneak peek of what you can get in the advanced data study. I do have a 2-week membership where it's only $5 if you guys want to check it out. Otherwise, the monthly membership will be $8. But we have the running back study here, and let me just go to the end. So I had Tyler Algier. It might be hard to see here, but Tyler Algier ranked 7th in my rushing score. And this is looking at, fantasy points per game, yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced, breakaway runs, elusive, explosive runs, run grade, and a few other things here. So he graded out really well. He actually graded out better than Bijan Robinson. So Tyler Algier is no slouch. He remains a high-value handcuff, especially in a best ball format. If anything happens to Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier will be the lead back and probably rack up a ton of fantasy touches. But everything went well for Bijan this year, and honestly, he could have had more, but Algier is just playing like a really competent backup. So we expect Bijan to continue to play well and maybe even have a better season. Just another year of continuity in the Zach Robinson system, better, mechanics and timing for Penix could lead to better offense for Atlanta. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. Let's look at the receivers. There's really only 2 that we care about. We got Drake London and Darnell Mooney. London had a massive 158 targets. That's 28.26% target share, 9 touchdowns, 1,200 yards, 100 receptions. Man, he's blossoming into that number 1 receiver that we kind of wanted him to be. He failed to hit 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons with Arthur Smith. He only had 6 touchdowns combined in his first 2 years. Balls out for 9. I think he's a locked in, low end wide receiver 1. I think if you can get him in round 2 of fantasy drafts, I think Drake London's going to be just fine with Michael Penix. We've seen Penix light it up pretty well at the college level, and he was still kind of feeding Drake London. If we just look at the numbers down the stretch here, he had the 40-point game here with the 2 touchdowns, 10 for 187, but another 100-yard game, 7 for 106. 5 for 59 here. Solid way to end the season. He did catch the 2 touchdowns at the end of the year here, but huge game. So I think there's going to be a lot of those moments. But if you look at it, he's just consistent all year long. He didn't really have any bad games. Obviously week 1, bit of a dud, but you can survive a 7 and a 9 every now and then. But we love Drake London. And then, like a high, a mid-second round pick next year. I don't know what the ADP is going to be yet, but I like Drake London as a low-end wide receiver 1. He'll look good as your wide receiver 2 if you can get him there. And then Darnell Mooney, I don't know what to do with him. I'd like to see him stay healthy. I think he struggled a little bit as it got towards the end of the year. Let me just look at Mooney's numbers. He really faded down the stretch. He had been popping off here for a couple games, but he really just had no consistency, and that's kind of what he's been throughout the last few years. So for fantasy, like a redraft purpose, he's probably not a guy that we trust in our lineups every week. I do think that with Penix and throwing the ball, a little bit deeper, maybe that's something that can connect in 2025. But for now, he's more of like a best ball wide receiver 5, a redraft guy at the end of your bench that you could probably whip out if you need to. I do want to see Atlanta maybe acquire a third receiver, but Ray McCloud filled in really well for them. 62 catches, 686 yards, and a touchdown. He's kind of just like this slot receiver that they used, and was a nice outlet for both Kirk Cousins. And I just want to see what his numbers were with Ray or with Penix here. So not so great with Penix, but he was a guy that caught 2, 3, 4 passes per game for most of the year. Not sure if he'll be back with the team or not, but I wouldn't mind an upgrade here at wide receiver 3. And then Pitts, man, I do want to speed it up. We've been going on 10 minutes here on the Falcons, but with Pitts, still the lead tight end, 47 receptions, 74 targets, 602 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So a career high in touchdowns is nice to see. 602 yards. It's just not enough from Kyle Pitts, and he was healthy all season here. I don't know why he wasn't able to. Maybe some of this was Kirk Cousins. Maybe some of it was Michael Penix. If we just look at Kyle Pitts' numbers with Penix real quick, maybe we can see something here. So he had one game, 4 for 44 and a touchdown, but 2 duds, and it's just too many duds here from Kyle Pitts. So for now, he's a tight end too in fantasy, and I think in Dynasty we're not so excited with what we got. But for now, we're drafting Bijan and Drake London next year. I think Penix is a super flex QB2. We're drafting Algier as a handcuff, back end bench running back. And then you can think about sprinkling Darnell Mooney, probably not Ray McCloud. And then Pitts, he's just the best ball tight end too at this point. So there you go, your Atlanta Falcons for 2025. Okay. Carolina Panthers. What a weird year. Dave Canales and is it Brian Idzik? I think it's Brian Idzik. It's Idzik. Let's see here. Am I right? Oh, that's unfortunate. It's Brad. It's Brad Idzik. Okay, so we got Brad Idzik calling the plays. My bad there. I usually like to compare from the previous year, but we don't have a lot to go on. But it was Bryce Young's rookie year compared to his sophomore year. So we go from 2 to 5 wins. Nice. The yards are up about 270 yards on the year, which is nice. We actually ran a lot fewer plays, almost 80 fewer plays. And then we did end up throwing the ball a little bit less. We ended up running the ball a little bit less. That's just, less plays. But we see efficiency go up here. 6.24 yards per attempt. That's up from 5.54. And then yards per carry here, 4.58 yards. That's almost 6 yards or, 0.6 yards per attempt here that we're increasing here. So solid efficiency numbers. And look at the touchdowns go up. 7 rushing touchdowns. You got 18 in 2024, 13 passing touchdowns, 22 in 2024. So the big question is, what's the next step here? Are we going to maintain this level and be kind of just like a 5-7 win team? Or do they have enough projection now where we can think, okay, yeah, let's give them 8 and 9 on the season, and Bryce Young's going to flirt with 3,500 passing yards and maybe 25 touchdowns. That would be the next step for him. But overall, Young, mixed reviews. He gets benched in the beginning of the year. Andy Dalton comes in for 2 games. He wins a game to make things muddy. And then, we see Bryce Young come back in week 7 and basically play the rest of the year. Obviously a terrible first few games here, just really, really bad. I'm not sure what was going on here, but he gets back in week 7. I'm not sure. Maybe he got hurt in that game. I can't remember. Only 2 passing attempts. I don't know. Or he came in relief. That's when Andy Dalton got benched. Okay. So then week 8, he's back. So as a starter, his fantasy points the rest of the year, 13, 10, 12, 16, 23, 12, 12, 27, 16, and 36. Now, these aren't QB1 numbers. We got to get this percentage, keeping it above 65, I think would be nice. Not a lot of passing yards output. His season high on the year was 298, which was nice against Tampa Bay. But we see touchdowns here. 1 passing touchdown in a handful of games, 2, 2, and 3 to end the year. But then starts to fall into the end zone a little bit, rushing the ball. So I didn't really expect that out of Bryce Young, for him to be able to run the ball and rack up, 6 rushing touchdowns on the year. So that really boosted his fantasy floor. Maybe those kind of fall back next year. But if you just look at this from week about 10 on, like this profiles as a QB2 that you can work with in super flex league. So I still don't think he's a QB1 option, especially not in dynasty formats, but he's now like a top 20-ish quarterback that we can go forward with. And it's really going to depend on what they do in the offseason. I think they need some work here at wide receiver. We'll see about tight end, and then obviously Jonathan Brooks getting hurt. But I think there's enough here with Bryce Young where you feel good heading into the 2025 season. And he is the starter at this point. He earned enough. He won 2 of the last 3 games, and he kind of ended really strongly, which I'd like to see. So good job, Bryce Young there. And then, oh my goodness, the running backs. Chuba Hubbard is really solid, man. He's just well-rounded. 250 rushing attempts, 1,200 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. He was the team's lead receiver back. He caught 43 passes, 171 yards, and a touchdown. Not a great yards per catch. He was better in that department in 2023, almost 6 yards per catch. And he improved greatly as a runner, 3.79 yards per carry in 2023, up a full yard, 4.78. So mini breakout season here for Chuba Hubbard. And I don't really know if we're going to see Jonathan Brooks in 2025. I think they should really take their time with their second round pick. So we're going to see Chuba Hubbard start a handful of games next year, maybe all of them. We'll see. He will enter the season in training camp and everything entrenched as the number 1. And I think they're just going to try and see if they can add Jonathan Brooks back. And even for fantasy, man, like we're not drafting Jonathan Brooks coming off another ACL tear. Essentially, I don't know if it was the ACL and the MCL. I'll have to look into that. But I don't really like to touch those kind of players. And the fact that I think that he tore the same one does not bode well. And Chuba Hubbard looked really good. So I think for 2025, the take is to draft Chuba Hubbard. Forget about Jonathan Brooks. We can think about him in 2026. But for now, like Chuba should be drafted as like a low end RB1. I think he should be a top 15-ish running back and a guy that should garner a lot of volume again. And, down the stretch, I know he got hurt as well, so he could have had a little bit more. But man, we're talking about a guy that averaged 16 points per game PPR. And, the touchdowns were there, receptions were there, played well. Pretty much all year. Only one bad game of 4 point, I guess week 1, 2, but 4.3. Otherwise, he was getting you a solid clip every week. So we like Chuba at the fellowship. Let's talk about the receiver. This is the position that I think really needs to get looked at. They traded away Mingo. They cut Deontay Johnson. We're running out Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and Jalen Coker. Now, Jalen Coker was a fun undrafted guy. He popped in a lot of my advanced data studies there that you guys can go check out at the website. But we're kind of rolling into 2025 with more questions than answers. Adam Thielen, very, very old, but he was playing at an elite level at the end of the season, especially for fantasy lineups. And then Legette, who I like. I think Legette turned in a nice rookie season. He was kind of in and out of the lineup at times, but 49 catches to lead the team, 84 targets to lead the team, and then 497 yards, 4 touchdowns. He looks like a quality number 2, number 3 receiver. So I think for Dynasty, you're feeling good about what you got there. And he's a guy that I think can stick around and hopefully continue to build off a solid rookie season. But Adam Thielen, man, we can't go into 2025 with him being our lead guy, can we? Either way, I don't know which at the moment, man, like they need to draft another receiver to compete with Coker for number 3, number 4 duties, potentially draft a guy for Bryce Young's number 1 to be, his number 1 future. We could be looking at, let's pull up the draft order here. And I'm kind of rambling here. They picked number 8, Tet McMillan, man. If they do that, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll see. A lot to think about here at receiver, but I think Legette and Coker, these are guys that can stay in Carolina for the next few years and be a part of the receiver core. But we do need to upgrade at the number 1 position. But solid rookie seasons from Legette and Coker. And then at tight end, man, I thought Jatavian Sanders was starting to come around. Then he had the weird neck injury. He's going to be a sleeper of mine, I think, in 2025. So I don't have much to say here. They used a lot of tight ends in different ways here. Tommy Tremble's not very good, but Sanders was looking like he could be a guy that could break out. And then he had the neck injury. And year 2 tight ends, man, we'll keep an eye on Jatavian Sanders. So to recap here, are we drafting Panthers in 2025? Bryce Young can be your QB2, but you're going to want another guy with him as your QB2, QB3 options. I think Chuba's the one guy that we feel comfortable about. And then Legette can be your number 3 receiver, your flex. And we'll see if they add a receiver that could change. But overall, it's Chuba and maybe Bryce. And let's keep it moving here. We're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints. Probably one of my least favorite teams to talk about. They got a lot of issues, guys, and I don't really know how to attack this. We're getting a new coach, which is going to be cool. Maybe it's Kellen Moore after the Super Bowl here. But a disaster season for the Saints, 5-12 after starting 2-0. They were lighting the scoreboard up to begin the year, but Derek Carr gets hurt. Alvin Kamara, just another year older. Chris Olave with the concussions. Taysom Hill goes down. Just this team was never really at 100%. Rashid Shaheed went down early. This team just really couldn't maintain any health from its playmakers, and that's going to be one of the huge things that they have to look at in the draft this year. And I know they have to figure out their salary cap. It's one of the worst in the league, if not the worst. But what are the weapons on this team? Like, we got a maybe age 30 Alvin Kamara, who's slowing down. Jamal Williams is dust. Kendre Miller might be a guy that they could lean on more in 2025. So I like him potentially. And then Chris Olave, man, with these concussions, that's got me worried about him long-term. I'd like to think that he can come back and be okay and come above that. But we know he's really good. We just didn't get to see him much this year. So a lot of people are probably not going to be so super excited to draft him in 2025. I'll have to think about it a little bit. We'll see if MBS returns. He actually played pretty well and kind of filled in that Rashid Shaheed role. I want Shaheed on my teams next year if Derek Carr is the quarterback, because him and Carr were just on fire. Shaheed looked like he could be a top 12 receiver last year had everything stayed healthy, but just nothing. Cedric Wilson, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Jermaine Jackson. These guys got a lot of opportunities here, but again, with Derek Carr going out and Rattler and Haener, just nothing could connect. But the Saints are a team that really needs something. Olave, Rashid, and we'll see if they retain MBS, but they need something else to add to this wide receiver group or sign a veteran. A guy like Darius Slayton could fit well on this team. I know he's a deep ball guy, but we need veteran leadership presence or something on this team here for the young Saints group. At tight end here, Taysom Hill, he's still listed as a tight end. He actually was graded out as one of the best tight ends by ESPN Analytics, which I thought was kind of funny. But man, his numbers were impressive. He was running the ball fantastically, 7 yards a clip, 6 rushing touchdowns, and then he kept growing as a receiver, man. His targets per route run were insane. I think he led the NFL for all tight ends in targets per route run. So when he was running a route, he was getting targeted very, very heavily. Just didn't catch a touchdown, but man, for a while there, he had a nice little run. I think that might have been in October or something like that. He was a starting top 5 tight end for a little bit. So I don't really even know what to say much about the Saints. We're coming into a weird transition period where they don't have money to spend. They're kind of going nowhere with quarterback. Kamara's their best player, and he's kind of on his way out. We got Rattler and Jake Haener there. I don't know if any of those guys are the answer here. You can't really draft a quarterback. Let me see where the Saints are here. At 9, you're not really going to get access to a quarterback here. So they're probably going to eat it for one more year with Derek Carr and these backups, Haener and Spencer Rattler, and maybe just see if they can just find a way to add some talent to this roster. Because right now I see it as you're going in with Carr. Like, it actually could be okay to start the year if everything stays healthy, but we just know things don't stay healthy for teams. But if you have Derek Carr at your QB1, and then I would imagine we're going to see an RB duo of Kamara and Kendre Miller, with probably Kendre Miller maybe leading the team in carries and Kamara playing more snaps and getting more receptions and things like that. But maybe Kendre leads the team in rushing next year. And then receivers, you got Olave, Rashid Shaheed, maybe another guy out there, maybe Tet McMillan if the Panthers don't take him. That'd be pretty sweet here. They're sitting here at 9. They could take, they could take one of the other receivers here too. I do like these guys. They're kind of lower on the board, but Igbuka's really far down here. I thought there was another one that I'm missing here. I don't really count Travis Hunter. Where is my guy? Not Matthew Golden. Who am I thinking of here? Yeah, I'm thinking of Luther Burden. I don't know how I missed him, but Luther Burden could be a nice addition for the Saints. So, upgrading this receiver position is a priority. maybe they draft like the running backs are really good in this draft class. They can maybe even bring in another guy and kind of just have open tryouts here and see who makes this team, because this team isn't going anywhere in 2025. They have a lot of issues with salary cap and just really no direction. And hopefully this new coach can bring in some players in the draft and free agency and maybe build something for 2026. Maybe the Saints just eat it in 2025. They win 4 games, they get a top 5 pick, and you get a chance at doing some great things in the future. Tight end still too. I mean, Foster, like they use 3 guys. I just don't know if this rotations can stay forever. Taysom Hill's up there in age. I like Moreau. I think Jawan Johnson's fine here, but they just have a bunch of guys that just they're just guys. They're not really elite players. So probably my worst review of a team here from the Saints perspective, but I just don't really want to talk much about them. They have a lot of work to do. And who knows, that they could be decent next year. Assuming everything stays healthy. Maybe Alvin Kamara has a little renaissance here, but I really worry about him slowing down. I worry about this offensive line. Not a lot of money to play with things. I mean, their contract situation is bad. I believe they're a bajillion. Yeah, they're $51 million over the cap in 2025. We can't do anything. And they're paying Derek Carr $51 million. Cameron Jordan, 36 years old, getting $20 million. Taysom Hill getting $18 million. Eric McCoy's solid. He's getting almost 15.5. But just a lot of issues here. Not going to be able to sign guys. It looks like, let me go to the free agent list here. Chase Young, Jawan Johnson, probably can't bring these guys back unless they take a lower contract. But there's MVS down here. He was just a 1-year thing. I don't know, guys. Saints make me nervous. But we're going to finish up here with Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Very pleasant surprise. And we shouldn't have been surprised after what they did in 2023 with Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield comes out with a career. He might not play better than what he did last year, man. We're talking 4,500 yards on the dot, 41 passing touchdowns, 16 interceptions is fine. He almost ran for 400 yards and he added 3 touchdowns. This is fantastic. Like Baker Mayfield showing why he was the number 1 overall pick in that draft not so long ago. And just this is a good one because we can kind of compare the last 2 years to this team pretty easily. Finally, a team with continuity and finally a team that kind of knows what they're doing. We got Todd Bowles locked in for his 3rd year, going into his 4th year. We lose Liam Cohen to the Jags, which hurts a little bit, but we saw success with Canales and we saw success with Liam Cohen. Baker Mayfield kind of threw the same amount of passing attempts, so they stayed the same, but a huge spike in pass completion percentage, 71.45% up from 64. That's a huge deal. 7% when you're throwing this much times, like that's a huge deal. And then again, over 500 yards, almost 500 yards added to the total passing yards column. Yards per attempt up almost a full yard. Passing touchdowns, 41 up from 28. And we actually were able to run the ball more too, just because this team was playing so well and completing high percentages of their passes, getting deep plays, moving the ball, getting more plays. We saw 483 rushing attempts and then a huge, huge spike. This is the best rushing season I have recorded for Tampa Bay, and I have it going back to 2017. The most rushing attempts with 483, the most rushing yards with 2,500, and then the best yards per carry that they've had. And who knows how long, maybe a Doug Martin season, but 5.25 yards per carry, 16 rushing touchdowns, 6 fumbles. This was just a tremendous season. And even like the Tom Brady era, like they almost beat the Tom Brady 2021 season. I believe that was Tom Brady. I can't remember. Was Tom Brady 2021 and 2022? Yeah, Tom Brady was 2022. 2021 and 20. He played 3 years with Tampa Bay. So we're talking a better season almost than the Tom Brady years. And Brady threw 40 touchdowns in that time as well. So props to Baker Mayfield and this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team because they really played well. Now we talked enough about Baker Mayfield, man. I mean, I think heading into we got some questions with Tampa Bay. We lost Chris Godwin, which was a damn shame because I'm just going to show you guys here. He he was like the best receiver in football last year when he got injured. And I was so mad at Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay was getting blown out and they were trying to come back and secure points. And they injured Chris Godwin on one of the final plays that didn't end up mattering. But I have him graded out as the number 2 wide receiver from football last year in terms of these advanced metrics. And I don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the year. This is a really tough injury. He's up there in age. The body doesn't heal that way. But we still saw Baker Mayfield ball out and play really well. And basically, they leaned on the running game. Let's talk about Bucky Irvin, because he was one of the best running backs in my advanced data study as well. He goes for 1,100 yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, and he catches 47 passes out of 52 targets, almost 400 yards. Just a gem. And he didn't even start the whole year. It took him a little bit to get going. Rachaad White was still involved heavily as a passer, but he just kept losing more and more work, and he really wasn't a trusted player in our fantasy lineups, but Bucky Irving was, and I think next year we see this split grow even wider. We might even see more Sean Tucker than Rachaad White next year, because I want to see more Bucky. I think Bucky's small, though, with his frame. We do need to have a compliment back to him, but if we're going to give, 350 carries, I mean, they had 400 carries to the top 3 running backs, and they threw it 121 times. If we can get Bucky like 240, get him to 240 carries, maybe get him to 65 targets, something like that. Like, we're talking about a potential top 5 running back. And I think, we have Mike Evans getting up there in age. We have Chris Godwin, maybe dinged up and quite not 100%. I wonder if these Baker Mayfield numbers come down in 2025 and we kind of feature a running heavy approach here. And Baker threw the ball really well to these running backs. I mean, we're talking almost 900 yards to the running back, 7 touchdowns. I mean, he threw 107 completions. He might have had the best success throwing to the running back. So I still think they're going to be involved heavily in the offense, but we have to talk about the receivers because Mike Evans, again, getting up there in age, just barely crossed the finish line to get 1,000. Chris Godwin just not going to be the same. And then Jalen McMillan had some bright spots, man. He was 8 touchdowns on the year. I think he's going to operate fine as that number 2, number 3 receiver whenever you need him to be. But we need some help after that. Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer, Ryan Miller, Raheem Jarrett, Cameron Johnson. Just with Godwin's injury and Evans' twilight of his career, I wouldn't mind seeing the Buccaneers invest, in a day 2 pick, whether it's second or third round. I think bringing in another receiver here and making sure that Baker Mayfield stays with the full cupboard, if you will. And then Cade Otton down there, man. I mean, for a while there, when Mike Evans got hurt, Otton was we were ranking him as a top 5 tight end for a few weeks here. So I still think, for best ball, he has his purposes. I don't know if he's going to be that guy for redraft leagues, but we'll evaluate Otton after the draft. He's still locked in as the number 1 tight end. But I just want to shout out Payne Durham looked pretty good too down the stretch there. But overall, man, I really like this Tampa Bay team. They're going to be the favorite to repeat as NFC South champions. And what do we do for 2025? I think Mayfield, he's probably not going to be drafted. And I have to look at the ADP here. We could probably actually do that. All right, we're going to go to Underdog ADP, and this is all available on the fantasyfellowship.com. Let's just type in QB. Baker Mayfield going off at QB 8 sounds about right. Just ahead of Goff and Purdy and Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams. So it seems like a fair value for him. I think I'll probably draft him, in that 8, 9, 10 range, and we'll kind of watch his ADP throughout the summer. But he's definitely a low-end QB1. I do think he regresses in 2025. But I'm drafting the hell out of Bucky Irving. Let's see where Bucky is. Bucky Irving, RB10, man. Sign me up. I don't know if I'm taking him. I'm probably taking Bucky over Jonathan Taylor, probably over Christian McCaffrey. I do think Bucky should be closer to RB6, 7 in that range. So we're drafting the hell out of Bucky. Let's see where Rachaad White is. Rachaad White's probably buried. Yeah, RB45. So we're just done with Rachaad White. And then obviously the receiver series. Chris Godwin being drafted. Chris Godwin still being drafted at pick 65. wide receiver 35 off the board. McMillan, wide receiver 43. I'll probably buy McMillan over Godwin at these prices. But that's the Tampa Bay draft pecking order right now. So we're drafting Bucky. You could probably add Evans. I just think wide receiver 19, like I just worry about him falling off at some point. I do like this Buccaneers team, and Mike Evans continues to defy the odds. But overall, that'll do it. I think Tampa Bay wins the NFC South in 2025. But I'm willing to be wrong on that. I don't think the Saints are in contention, but I do think we're going to get a run from Atlanta if Michael Penix can kind of capture lightning in a bottle, a little bit of year two magic. They have awesome weapons. Year two of that whole system could be kind of fun. So Atlanta will be my dark horse there. I don't think I can see Carolina doing it quite yet. I do expect Carolina to be in the hunt for 8 to 9 wins. Saints bringing up the rear at 4 to 5. So winner of the NFC South will be 11-6. Tampa Bay, Atlanta duking it out. But there you have it, guys. That's it for me. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and watching this video. If you made it to the very end, email me at thefellowkgb@gmail.com. I'll see if I can get you guys hooked up with a free month of the membership service. So thefellowkgb@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Got me feeling icy.